Computer want to speak?
I do not believe we have any guests as of yet.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll go there. Okay, are there any?
Tom,
yes.
This is Kathy. Just to share, Jeanette Schaefer is present from the Department of Libraries, and so is April Shaw.
Okay.
You've already noticed Jesse and Josh are here. I believe, oh, here comes Maxie.
I
think Tom McMurdo may be joining us.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Maxie.
Morgan, Maxie. Morgan.
Welcome home.
Jet lagged.
Yeah. You wake up early in the morning?
We got back Friday night late, and then into Boston, and Christy drove us home on Saturday. So I'm a little bit better today than I was yesterday. So it's not as, the older you get, it's not as easy.
Oh yeah, you're telling me.
Okay, so everybody's here from the board, plus Kathy, Jesse, Jeanette, and April. Oh, Josh is here, and Tom McMurdo may be joining. So, okay. So once again, call the meeting to order. Okay, are there any changes to the agenda? Anything else to bring up? Okay, if not, okay. And any public comments? Nobody's here with public comments. The only public comment is if right in the middle you hear the dogs barking their full heads off. There's a cat next door that comes over occasionally and walks right in front of the sliding glass door to tempt them. And they go nuts. And then, okay. So there's no members of the public going? Okay. Okay, the next thing is the July 12th minutes. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve? And then we'll ask for any additions or subtractions, corrections.
So moved. Linda?
Okay, Linda's moved. Who seconds?
Oh, second.
Okay, don't everybody speak at once here. Yeah. Okay, now, are there any corrections, additions, subtractions, whatever?
I had one quick feedback to get rid of superfluous detail. The comment I made late at the end of the meeting about the state historic sites passes and the park passes, that needs to be more of a summary or an overview, like Kathy has suggested. So I recommend it says Adrian suggested, or Adrian made some suggestions related to sending out the state historic site passes and the state park passes, and then end the sentence right there, because the rest of it is superfluous detail that somebody else could go back to the recording and learn more about the three things I said. That only captured one, and it's cleaner to say suggestions. And then they can look back to see what those suggestions were. Okay. And then everything else is fine.
Okay, very good. Any other suggestions? Jesse has that. And as I've said at most places, when people are taking minutes, that's why they're called minutes and not hours. So we try to keep them as short as possible with the main items, and that's it. And this is great. And by the way, Jesse, the timeline, thank you very much on the recording. So if anybody knows, they know it's at 1 hour, 5 minutes, 16 seconds. And they can go back and find out exactly where they're going. So that's good. Okay, so if there are no other additions or corrections, all in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
We have an abstention. Okay. Okay. That V. Geographic name procedures. That's essentially why we're meeting today. And I asked Maxie and Deb to meet just to go over them and come up with suggestions, and they met with Kathy, I guess 2 or 3 times, right? And to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. So I was asking Kathy to go step by step, and of course, Maxie and Deb, please chime in with your expertise on why this was that, and anybody else. We'll go through the 17 points, or I don't know what it boiled down to. But if you could start there, Kathy, that would be appreciated.
Sure. Thank you so much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I want to first off thank everybody who was available to connect with me in between meetings. Maxie and Deb, thank you for your suggestions and formatting ideas. We have a suggestion from a conversation that we had to thank for sort of breaking this down into the petitioner's part and then into the board's part, changing the layout of the document to help try to clarify. And then I was also able to meet with Adrian and Deb in conversation and go through their questions and comments and ideas. And I know, James, we were trying to connect and we just kept missing each other. So I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to talk with you and talk about some of the thought behind these, just to explain it. But what I want to do today is to just kind of, especially since people might just look at this video of our meeting today to see why are we doing this. I want to just share a little bit of information before we get into the general discussion. So really in my role as the state librarian, joining the team here at the Department of Libraries this past February 14th, which I love that Valentine's Day is when I came. I always can remember it. I've been here about 6 months, and of course, we're trying to really, folks have been trying to onboard me and share what they know about our framework of supporting the Board of Libraries in the geographic naming process. And I had a really helpful meeting with April Shaw, who's here today, and also with Jessie Dahl, who's my new executive assistant. And we were learning about the processes behind the scenes that the Department of Library staff take to help shepherd things along and help get documents over to the board for consideration related to geographic names. And we realized that there were a lot of steps that the person in that administrative role clarifies for the public. So the members of the public would call the Department of Libraries and they might talk to April and they might go back and forth and ask questions so that they could prepare their materials and then bring them over to the board. And there are some things that the board really likes to see that are really helpful to the board in their work in the past. But not all of those steps and elements were called out in the existing geographic names policies. And just for reference, I'm going to just pop the existing link in the chat thread right now. And I'm also going to pop the current proposed revisions into the chat right now.
Ooh, goodbye.
And just to share, the high level goals here are that the first goal is that members of the public have a really clear understanding of the steps they must take to initiate the geographic names request and the elements that they can incorporate with their petition, like the research that they can do to support the name that they're proposing that the board consider. So the elements that they can incorporate to really strengthen their petition when it comes before the board. And then also that they understand the manner in which the board is going to consider every single one of the naming requests. Vermont is different from other states is what I've learned, and I'm sure you all know already, but this petition that is signed by the 25 interested persons, that is different from the federal manner in which a naming request comes about. So really making sure that people do what they need to do to initiate the request, having the requirements, which are the petition, and really what is it that we're naming? Where is this spot? Those are the required elements so that we all have in mind, this is the GPS, this is the exact thing we're naming. So we're not naming 2 different hills or 2 different mountains. We're bearing in mind the correct things. And then what are the recommended elements? The second goal is really to clarify roles and responsibilities around geographic naming. I could tell that it was getting a little bit muddy in our minds here in the department as far as who it was who could talk to the petitioner and say, oh, you don't quite have enough yet. Why don't you go get some more research? How the difference between us confirming that all of the elements are present that are required and actually undertaking research ourselves versus having other organizations, other libraries, other Vasara, historical associations, et cetera, for example, having those folks engaged with all of the resources that they have to support the petitioner. So really clarifying that's the role of the petitioner to conduct research in support of their naming request. This is their request that they're initiating, and that it's their role to make their case to you, the members of the board. And of course, it's the role of the Board of Libraries to make naming decisions consistent with state statute. Sometimes people say to me, oh, you get to name everything. And I might have thought that before I came to Vermont to take on the role of state librarian. And this may have been my dream to name everything in the state. But in fact, I have absolutely no vote in this process, and that is how it is set up. I am your secretary, despite what sometimes it looks like, and we need to find a way to clarify that even on the agendas. I'm not a member of the board. I'm the board's secretary. You all are members of the board, and it's up to you to evaluate these petitions. And so then, of course, to clarify, what is it that the department does and what is it that the state librarian does to support you in that role that you specifically have? It's really particular, and it seems to have almost nothing to do with the Department of Libraries' general work, but it is an important feature and it's an important aspect of your work here in Vermont. So the third and final goal is really that we all have one procedure document, and it's a public facing document. And that's one of the reasons that it's called a procedure. And that this document is used by the petitioner and also by the board. So it is one document with all of the information on the steps and how things should be flowing, what is required, what is recommended, how the whole process will work, what to expect. And that idea of having one procedure document is really consistent with how other boards' procedure documents work. And it's also consistent with the model that the US Board on Geographic Names has. They have one principles, policies, and procedures, domestic geographic names document. And so it's really good that the public's looking at the same document that we're looking at, that things be, while not absolutely the easiest to read because we're talking about a procedure document, at least pretty clear to folks. So really the hope that I have is that the revised procedures will help petitioners know what to expect throughout the geographic naming process, and that will demystify the process a little bit and increase Vermonters' access to the process. And just to refresh, and especially Bruce, you weren't here for the July meeting, but we did have a different proposal. I brought, as a state librarian, I brought to you a different proposal. I believe this proposal that is in front of you today is much improved. The other one was not approved. There were time constraints, but also there were a lot of clarifying questions. And I think that discussion is really helpful. Happy to continue editing the proposal that is in front of you today. And of course, it's entirely up to you all if you want to adopt a proposal or when you adopt it, or if it's in this form or in a slightly different form. And I just want to reiterate that I do appreciate everyone's help in coming to this current proposal. And I hope that you've all had time to take a look at the proposed revisions. And I'm going to just step back and I want to turn it back over to Tom to kind of moderate the conversation about it and any questions that folks may have. So thank you. Oh, one other thing I do need to mention. A procedure may be voted on by a board, just as far as process. If the board decides to vote, something to bear in mind is that for a vote on procedure, that it requires a majority of the full quorum not just those who are present. I think all of the board is present, so I think that will be one and the same. But just so you know what the process is that's called out in the Vermont Administrative Procedure Act. That's my understanding.
Well, some field is leader.
I'm not sure. Tom, are you there?
Whoop.
Maybe.
Whoops, I muted my headset. Yes, I was just
Oh,
going to say,
good.
yeah. Okay, sorry about that.
And James has his hand up. He's been very patiently waiting during
Okay,
the
I was going
intro.
to ask if anybody had any comments. I was talking, yes, that so far the procedure we're following here. Okay, James, go ahead.
James.
Okay, James, got on mute. Hello? Josh, is James unmuted?
James is unmuted. I was just checking that. James, we're not able to hear you. Is your microphone? It seems like it's on from what we can tell, but we're not hearing it.
Sometimes, depending on what you're on, you have to do the input. If you're on the computer, have to make sure internal microphone or an external microphone.
James, I see both that you've raised your hand and you've raised your physical hand. I'm not sure if you can hear us. Let me type to you. Josh, I'm wondering if you can call James on the telephone. Jesse, can you give Josh the number for James and we'll call James at his home number? Perhaps we can patch him through somehow. Josh could call him and give him the call-in number so that James can see the screen, but then talk on the phone. Oh, I could also put it into the, if James can see this. Put the phone number in the chat. Put everything there. There's some additional info with the phone conference ID. But Jesse, can you call James at his house? He doesn't seem to be looking at the chat or seeing it.
I'm happy to call James.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else until we get James on? Anybody else have comments on the beginning part?
Bruce's hand is up.
Oh, Bruce, go ahead.
Now, when you say on the beginning part, what do you mean?
What Kathy has just talked about, breaking it down into the three sections. Yes, goals.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate everybody for doing this and putting together a very helpful thing. I'll have comments on on different parts of the procedure, but maybe that's not appropriate now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the first part. Let's see. It's easier if you have it in front of you, Kathy, because or Maxie or Deb, because you're sort of looking at the 17 different parts. If you started with that and go over, it's a lot easier for you than.
Sure. Why don't Since,
Put it up.
yeah, I'll pull it up right now. Hang on for
Okay,
1
there you
second.
go.
I just have to get something else off my screen so that you don't get all my chat messages in front of you. Here you go. Okay. Okay, so do you see it on the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to make it large. Is that visible to you?
Yep.
Great. So just to, it sounds, Tom, like you want to go through it, and then we'll break it down into sections. So we'll do the kind of the preface and then the petitioner part and then the board part. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Hey, excuse me, but for some reason, it's not showing up on my screen. I just see,
Let me also, I had put it in the chat before, but
Oh,
let me
now
put it
it
here
is.
again. Did you
now
see
it
it?
is.
Okay.
It's there.
The above link, if somebody wants to look at it more than what I'm showing on the screen, you can also pull it up on the on your web browser. So the first change, just a note on formatting, the document, I've redlined the document, meaning that anything that is in black is the original policies as they stand now. And then things that have been struck through are things that I'm recommending that those be removed. And then things that are in red and in italics, those are the additional. And if adopted, every red word would go back to being normal, not italicized, and would be in black. And just a note on procedure documents, they do need to be indexed and retained. So from our Department of Libraries website, we would have all previous versions of this document that will be up in the future. So the real idea of this preamble is just to get the state statute front and center in people's minds, to make sure that people realize, that members of the public realize that the Board of Libraries, you are the ones who are designated to name geographic locations in our state, that those include mountains, streams, lakes, and ponds. And the addition of this portion that in the board in choosing names shall give preference to historical events, historic persons, and flora and fauna native to Vermont, names characteristic to Vermont and its traditions and local place names where long usage has made them appropriate and useful. So that is an exact quote from statute, and we include the chapter and verse there as well, so people can find the full statute. So I can
And
pause
that's one
there.
thing on this, everything is going linked directly to the reference on it, which so anybody can, if they don't believe us, they can go there and check it out themselves. Right.
I think so. I think we can do a PDF that has embedded links in it. Yes. Jesse, let's make sure to note that for any final version, that's what we'll do. James, your hand is still up and we haven't been able to hear you yet. So I just wanted to check if you can hear us and doesn't seem like it. So I'm just going to pause there after, because that's really the preamble section.
Sounds good to me. Anybody else have any questions or concerns?
Yeah, I just have a quick thought. Let's say this is a member of the public and they tune into this and they want to name a road. You have to wait until 16 and 17 or the last two things right at the end of the document, and they'd have to read through all this whole thing. And my view is, why don't you let them know up front? We name geographic features. We do not name transportation features, however you might want to word, and they don't have to read on any further.
Okay, good point.
Well, that certainly explains something about the other document, because when I was looking at it, so this is, I just pulled up the existing policies, And I was wondering, why did we put what we don't do so far up the list? So that, that would definitely be something that could be changed. I thought it was good to move things that we don't do further down the list, so it didn't complicate what we do, but it's kind of which way do you look at it? It's like, so happy to move that up to that other portion if you recommend.
I think that's a good idea. And make sure you put in bridges, because remember, it was Negro Brook and Negro Bridge. So even though we had jurisdiction over Negro Brook, the bridge is the Department of Transportation.
Bridges are, let me make sure.
I believe anything
Hold
dealing
on.
with transportation, I believe, part of the
Yeah.
road.
Bridges are listed here in number 17. So I'm going to just make a note that this should move up to beginning.
And then that pointed out that I think local roads are the town's jurisdiction, Department of Transport. So
Yeah, so that is the same language that is in the existing document. So 17 reads, the board will not name state roads, highways, bridges, or other transportation related entities. These come under the jurisdiction of the Vermont Transportation Board. And I can see that there's a typo, but 18, what should be 18, currently says the board will not name city streets or town roads. These come under the jurisdiction of the municipalities.
Do we want to put with the Vermont Transportation Board where that's housed? So is that VTrans or the Agency of Transportation? Or is the name sufficient enough that people will be able to find it? How do we refer to ourselves? Do we say, yeah,
We say Vermont Board of Libraries, so I think they should be able to
Okay.
find it. But remember, the folks in our office will be able to refer them on to the other people. I hear a phone number I hear a phone calling right now.
I think we are picking up James's wife.
This is
Okay,
There's
I've
Jim.
muted James for right now because he's in a call with Josh, I think.
okay.
And there's a comment from Deb. Deb, do you want to share your comment out loud? I'm just reading in the chat thread, Deb, your comment about the use of per in the preamble and that you recommend a change to according to.
Yes.
Okay. Do other folks agree with that we should make that change? I see a couple head nods.
It's fine.
It's fine with me.
Okay, if I don't hear something else, I'm gonna assume it's okay. So do you want to move to the second section about
Yes.
what the petitioner needs to do, really? So
Yep,
submitting
yep.
okay.
Now let's go to the next. Yep.
Great. Submitting a geographic naming petition for consideration by the board. So this first paragraph here talks about, I'll just read it. To initiate consideration of a new name or a name change of a Vermont geographic location by the Board of Libraries, an individual, and for the rest of the document, we call them the petitioner, must file a geographic naming petition signed by not less than 25 interested persons to the board. That sentence is a little bit clunky, but it is pointing back to our, where is it? Nope, that's not it. I get lost in here. 1 second. it points right back to here. Upon petition in statute, it says upon petition signed by not less than 25 interested persons. So that's where that really clunky language comes for and why I recommend leaving it clunky, just that we're quoting the statute and we're not mistakenly changing it somehow. Back to the proposed document.
And just one question.
Mhm.
The law says less instead of fewer.
By not less
less
than 25
25,
interested
as
persons.
opposed to fewer than 25.
Yes.
If you
Yeah.
count, okay, it's the law, so we'll let the legislature stick with their. You can
Yeah.
count them. It's fewer.
In the statute, it then goes on to say, or by petition of an administrative department of the state, and we'll get to that in one second.
So, I just have a question there, and again, I'm unfortunately have my lawyer hat on. The use of the word individual is not actually in the statute. So does that mean that like a nonprofit group couldn't come and do this? It has to be an individual.
Good question.
Well, I don't know, can I chime in?
Yeah.
We did have at one point, the representatives of the Green Mountain Club came before us. It was Dolls Peak up near Jay Peak. And it was a board, the Green Mountain Club initiative in bringing it before us. And the then president of the club and somebody else came to speak to us. So that's a good question, Deb, because an organization essentially initiated that petition at the time, and they were represented by their president, who obviously was an individual, but it was a Green Mountain Club initiated initiative.
I think that what you just shared is why, how do I explain? We need a petitioner to interact with. We need a point person. So members of the group can definitely sign, like the members of the Green Mountain Club signed. But when we're having the communication with the office, there has to be somebody that is standing up as the group leader, and they serve as the petitioner. That's my sense of how we've been operating for a long time.
Yeah, it may have been signed by the president of the club at the time, because doesn't the form clearly indicate where the petitioner signs?
Yeah, I think that the form has, and we will update the form, just as an aside, we'll update the form to reflect everything that is in the current roles. But my understanding is that because the department has been sort of a go-between with the groups, sort of prompting them and sending an email on behalf of the board at the board's request, that it's very helpful to have one point person who speaks for the group. It also minimizes if there's any infighting within a group. We listen to the one person, they're the petitioner on this. They speak for the whole team.
And I would say it needs to be the 25, what individuals, the
Interested persons.
Interested persons, because then you don't have to get into, well, it could be an organization of one person and I represent all these people. No, that's the proof. You need 25 people or 25 persons.
So if you want to be, I mean, maybe we're really not talking about an individual has to submit it. Maybe we're just saying a person. And remember, the Supreme Court has defined a person to include corporations and, entities and stuff like that. But anyway, as I said, I sometimes get to be a pain in the neck here because I have too much of my lawyer hat on.
Well, if they get 25 corporations to sign it, okay.
No, I was actually going back to the word individual.
Individual, right, yes. Is that what the statute says, persons or individual? It says persons.
Doesn't
right?
say either. It's silent.
It says
20. The statute says
25.
The Board of Libraries is hereby designated the state agency to name geographic locations, including mountains, streams, lakes, and ponds, upon petition signed by not less than 25 interested persons or by petition of an administrative department of state. My sense is that this area of, hey, we get a petition, that this within our procedure is something that we have the leeway to say, we need one person who speaks for all of the group. And in Vermont, 25 interested persons are signing the petition, and then one of them is they designate who is their petitioner, who's responsible for the communication. Because the department can't communicate and the board can't communicate with all 25 of them all the time. Yeah. We don't need to build consensus for them. They need to build consensus among themselves.
Yeah, and the law does say right. Less than, or should be fewer, but less than 25 interested persons.
And I think we have the purview to request that it be one person within our procedure in order to facilitate it for the goal, even if it doesn't say it in statute. I've noticed James is back, and I wonder if James, do you want to try unmuting James? Or I can unmute you. Oh, I can't.
No, you can't.
I can't unmute him.
He's on 5 at star 6.
Josh, are you here in the meeting? And can you, to me, it feels like James would do better on telephone than computer right now. He can watch the proceedings on the computer, but if he has a phone, I think we heard the phone ringing. That's probably the best way for him to participate right now. I don't know if Josh is hearing me. I hear Josh talking on the phone. So right now it's kind of a comedy of errors, but kind of a sad comedy of errors.
Okay, so let's, so how do we want to leave it here? Just as the law says, I would say, quote unquote. How about you, Deb?
This is Linda. We're already changing the language of the law, the way it was written, by saying, because it doesn't say anything about who files the petition. It says that the petition is submitted by not less than 25 interested persons. There's no indicator as to who is doing the filing except the 25 people, right? It's a petition signed by upon petition. It doesn't say upon petitioning by or who has done the petitioning. So I think we can write this however we want. And if we're concerned about individual not being inclusive of a group, like the Green Mountain Club or, Microsoft or, whoever, some corporation, then maybe we need an explanatory sentence that says, that one person has to be, that it can be a group, but one person has to be the spokesperson.
I'm just going to pause for a second here. I'm not an expert in Vermont law, and perhaps the state of Vermont, like the federal government, has defined personhood in different ways. But certainly at the time that this was written, my sense is that the statute contemplates individuals. The only group that can petition is an administrative department of state. So while a group of colleagues, friends, club members could certainly all sign a petition and say, I'm Kathy, I'm a member of this group, and here I am with my petition, I'm not sure that there's a real utility to doing it as a group versus just as individuals, or that that's what the statute intended.
So Debbie, you opened up a huge can of worms here. I think you have to resolve it for us.
Well, I guess the only question I have is, if the Green Mountain Club brought a petition, would you accept it because they're not an individual?
As long as there are 20, they couldn't sign it, signed your friends, the Green Mountain Club. They need to get 25 or more
I understand
club members
that. That's
to sign.
not,
and they need to have
one. Who brings the petition?
Well, again, the department respectfully requests that we have a point of contact for each petition. Please.
I understand that, but that could be in a separate section. It could just say, or in a separate sentence, it could just say that one person has to be designated as the petitioner. You know, I don't care. This is not like a big deal. I just don't want us to get in a situation where we would not accept something from, if the Green Mountain Club sent you a letter that said, you know, we're filing this petition, and then it is signed by, the letter is signed by the president of the Green Mountain Club, would you accept that?
No.
Because
I would not pass that to you. I would get in touch with the chairman of the chair of the board at that point, because we need to receive something that's signed by 25 individuals. We cannot receive something signed by one president.
Let's assume the Green Mountain Club gets 25 signatures.
Well, then, of course, yes.
Okay, so even though
we have been doing
the individual is not presenting it, the club is presenting it. I just want to make sure that we're not foreclosing a petition that's brought by a entity as opposed to an individual. That's all. And it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. I don't want to, I was conscious of the fact that Bruce said we once had a petition from the Green Mountain Club. So a Green Mountain Club gave the petition. There were 25 signatures, and so we accepted it, even though an individual didn't bring us it, then an entity brought it.
Yes, and there was a petitioner. I think that we would find, if we went back and looked at the form, that the 25 people, including the head of the group or whoever they nominated to be the petitioner for us, that 25 signatures at least are on the petition, and they have one representative who serves as the petitioner for communication with our office. Bruce, I'm sorry, I jumped in ahead of you because.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure when the Green Mountain Club thing came in, Marty Reed, who is the state librarian, then was handling all these things. I'm not sure exactly, you know, I'd have to go back and look at the petition, but I think we could clearly point out in the procedures, which is why I'm glad you have this labeled procedures, that a petition can be presented, you know, representing not less than 25 interested persons on the board, and it must identify an individual who will be called the petitioner to serve as the main point of contact between the department or the board or whatever it is. So we can have the staff can have these conversations, and that's just a little wordsmithing as far as I'm concerned. And it's
what if we said, excuse me, Bruce, but what if we said, to initiate consideration of a new name or name change, an individual or entity must file a geographic naming petition signed by not less than 25 interested persons to the board, period. One person must be designated as the contact person for the petition.
I think that sounds fantastic, Linda.
Sounds good.
I'm not convinced it will get past legal counsel, unfortunately. And
well, let's just try it. Let's just try it. Let's just try it.
Well, another point is that for the of course, I'm open to trying all different things. Every single time that we refer to the petitioner, which is a fairly short phrase, we would now need to replace potentially language throughout the entire document with something.
Why can't an individual, so then it says an individual or entity, and then in parentheses, the petitioner. You can still refer to that individual or the entity as a petitioner.
I suppose you could. I am concerned about the insertion of entities into this process. In Vermont law, there are many different things that are initiated by petitions of 25 people. Yeah. I do not know that, I do not, when I've been getting counsel and advice, they have always been people. There's been no consideration in any discussion I've had with my legal counsel about entities.
So leave out entities and say, well,
Okay.
once
So-
again,
so-
if the you know, hiking club or whatever initiate, somebody signed it and they're, you know, and one person needs to be designated, don't have to say entity. If it comes from a corporation or whoever signed it, and then they include 25 individuals. And then that's the petition and that's the contact person. Don't leave entities out.
So I think that the way Kathy just answered that is different than what I was getting at. And bottom line is basically what Kathy's saying, which is fine. This is a policy and a procedure. We won't accept something from the Green Mountain Club. Somebody has to be the petitioner. So an individual has to bring it. And if we get a letter from the Green Mountain Club that says we want to file this petition, you would go back and say, no, some individual has to file it. So if that's what you mean, that's fine.
Yeah, maybe, you know, Deb, it could be that I didn't understand exactly what you were saying. I think if we got, let me just say what I think we typically have been doing. If we got an application from the Green Mountain Club, we'd certainly note, hey, this bunch of petitioners, they come from the Green Mountain Club. And for the purposes of this petition, this human here is the one we're going to communicate with. So we would probably clarify that. It's wonderful that your club, the club doesn't have any extra standing under the law, I don't think. And I feel nervous even saying certain words, not being legally trained, but I think, you know, that the administrative departments of state, that's a group, or like that's a department that has some clout to initiate this. And then individuals do. And pretty much everybody who's an individual who might be interested has that same ability. Anyone could be a petitioner.
Can
Bruce has his physical hand, yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable with naming entity. The fact that something was brought by members of the Green Mountain Club was one thing, but on Negro Brook, okay, we did have a person who initiated the petition, this guy, whatever his name was, I don't remember now, but then he created a Facebook group called the Renaming Negro Brook Alliance. Well, I remember Jason and I saying, well, that's a Facebook group, for crying out loud. It doesn't necessarily have any legal or formal standing. So essentially the petitioner was this, whatever his name was, I don't remember at this point. So that's why I'd like to stay away from the entity thing and just reword the thing so that somebody will know that these 25 people are bringing something. The petition application shall identify someone who will serve as the petitioner and be the source of contact between the department and the board, whatever, and the other petitioners, because then it got pretty complicated too, because they talked about withdrawing their petition at one point. This guy did, and Jacob, I guess, the assistant attorney general, I think that's his name, said, well, then they're going to have to go back and contact everybody who signed. So it gets complicated. If it were a group, maybe it would be different. But just in this age of, you can name anything on Facebook, and this is what they did. Well, no, this was a petitioner, and a petitioner who circulated a petition and got at least 25 signatures. And I don't think we ought to complicate it any more than that by inserting entity.
I agree with you, Bruce.
Okay, we got it. And then, right, just need to clarify there that just the one individual, one person to be the liaison.
Can I make just one bit aside, because we could talk about it later. This would be a subject for the legislature to consider, but Tom, you and I talked about this a little bit the other day, and we talked about interested persons doesn't mean they have to come from Vermont. We could get a petition from somebody in Ulaanbaatar or Tashkent, for crying out loud, who wants to name something. And from a policy point, maybe the legislature wants to weigh in on this because,
okay. But
you
they're
know,
not right now. So just based on
right.
the procedures now, we'll just go interested persons, and they could be 12th graders or a class of 5th graders, and that's fine as long as there's 25 interested persons.
Tom, Deb has her hand up, and I have
Okay.
put a suggested rewording into the chat thread that I can read
Okay.
after Deb.
Okay, Deb. You had your hand up, Deb?
I'm sorry. I don't have my hand up.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what's your wording there, Kathy?
Let me try to read it. I'll try to clean up any typos by editing them. To initiate consideration of a new name or a name change of a Vermont geographic location by the Board of Libraries, a geographic naming petition signed by not less than 25 interested persons must be submitted to the board. One individual must serve as the contact person for the petitioners, and then in parentheses, the petitioner.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Next. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay. Do you want me to just read it, or do you want to take turns reading them, or?
Yeah, I want you to read it there. That'd be easier.
Okay.
Sorry.
The geographic naming petition must include written documentation to support the proposed geographic name consistent with, and then I call out the state statute. Such documentation may include historical information, government records, and any other documents or publications relevant to the proposed geographic name. So this is saying that it's necessary to include written documentation to explain your proposal.
Yep.
It then goes on to say petitioners are encouraged to propose a new name or name change of a Vermont geographic feature that is consistent with the domestic geographic names editorial guidelines of the U.S. board. It should say on geographic names, and I'm highlighting that as an edit because it's a typo. USBGN.
Okay.
Then it goes on with a bulleted list. It says the complete petition must also include, first bullet, a description of the exact location of the geographic feature to be named. Second bullet, the global positioning system, GPS, coordinates of the geographic feature. And third bullet, a map with the geographic feature clearly labeled, photocopies acceptable. Just to share quickly, I believe that even though this isn't exactly called out in statute, we all need to be sure we're naming the same exact spot, that we don't end up, we thought we named this rock, but you thought we named the other rock, and we have some confusion about names. So the specificity of it with the GPS and the maps and the description, so we all know we're looking at the same thing. That is, I think, a good thing to continue to include. And are these elements, by the way, were all elements of the application as it's posted now online. Nothing here is new. Nothing is different from what we've been asking for. I see heads nodding. Do we want to keep going?
Yeah, and I
Just a
don't,
Sure.
I'm sorry, go. Yep.
quick suggestion. Could you provide a link to the USBGN or the whatever it
Yes.
is, those editorial guidelines, so then they can go and follow it themselves? So that should be embodied in whatever procedure thing we put on our
I see.
website as information.
You know, on the one hand, yes, I like the idea of the links, and on the other hand, I worry about the dead links. So I think we have to think about both of those things. Sometimes if they revise this, they would probably, since it's a policy and it's probably similar to the state law rather, they probably need to keep the old policy up and then put the new policy up. So
Okay.
I'll find out, I'll check with other departments on how they do that, but certainly we could have a resource page or just make sure that we include that in the current links in all of the communications.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. This next paragraph, the petitioner is encouraged to provide evidence of any published or verbal usage of the proposed name. The petitioner is encouraged to seek assistance in researching the proposed name from the Vermont Historical Society, local historical societies, local libraries, and the Vermont State Archives and Record Administration prior to submitting the petition. Maxie.
Question, I think I've brought it up before, the word encourage. Who encourages the petitioner? The Department of Libraries? In
On the word of library. This is our document, right?
Right.
And that was what Kathy was saying at the beginning. This is our policy, or not policy. These are our practices. So anything in this is us, the Vermont Board of Libraries. We are the entity that determines what needs to be done. So it's not from the library, Kathy. It's not their jurisdiction, it's our jurisdiction.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with the word encouraged.
But we can't
Would it be
require.
clear? Would it be clearer if we said the board encourages the petitioner to provide evidence? Because it's really the board. I mean, we're encouraging them, right?
We're encouraging, correct.
So take out the passive voice and say the board encourages.
Okay, I can go with that.
Because we're the ones, we can't require, but let's say they don't get one of them. When we look at it, this is perfectly good, Daisy Flower Peak or whatever, and they get all the documentation, but they're missing one. So we can say, look at that. Yep, that's perfectly good, and approve it. So we just encourage them to go to those pieces. And if they leave out one, it's for us to determine if it's relevant or not. But that's the board that makes that decision.
I agree. I like the use of the active voice rather than the passive voice.
Very good.
Okay, so the sentence will now read, the board encourages the petitioner to provide evidence of any published or verbal usage of the proposed name. I think it might be a good idea, since we're changing the sentence a little bit, to eliminate a couple of words. So to say, to connect those two sentences, the board encourages the petitioner to provide evidence of any published or verbal usage of the proposed name and to seek assistance in researching the proposed name from the Vermont Historical Society, local historical societies, local libraries, and the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration prior to submitting the petition. And then there's the next paragraph, and we can make that same change to the first sentence. The board encourages the petitioner to include written support for the proposal within the petition. Written support of the proposal may be solicited from federal, state, or local, municipal, or county agencies, Native American tribes, civic organizations, historical societies, libraries, owner or owners of the property on which the geographic feature is located, and others familiar with the geographic feature and the appropriateness of the proposal. I want to give credit where credit's due with this most recent point. Bruce earlier had said, the way that this plays out, you could be in
Timbuktu.
Nairobi, you could be in, where did you just say, Maxie? Timbuktu, you could be anyone, anywhere in the world. And in Vermont law right now, the sense we have is that it's interested persons is not defined as a Vermonter living in Vermont. So it's pretty expansive. This section is adapted from the US BGN section about soliciting local input. Now, these aren't required. The board would still consider the application without these, but certainly it would be stronger with these elements. And that's something that we would communicate to folks. Bruce?
Yeah, just quick, also, before you did that first, the petitioner is encouraged. We had petitioners are encouraged to link to BGN or whatever it is, so make it consistent throughout the document. Secondly, Yeah, this is an interesting thing because I do remember BGN having explicit, I think, it may have been explicit language, but it was certainly readable, to encourage reaching out to local agencies or officials. I don't know, I don't remember what their language was. And we would explain to people, and we did that in the case of Negro Brook, but in another case as well, we said, well, he said, there's no requirement that we have to reach out to the local people. And I think we explained to him, but we try to, because this, but if we take an action, it doesn't goes up to BGN for consideration. So we try to harmonize certain elements of our procedure with the BGN procedures. And they did have some sort of hortatory language about dealing with locals. And we did have a petition. I think, Maxie, you may have just come on the board of Prosperity Peak in Groton State Park. Deb was there. It became pretty controversial. We disapproved that it was really a political objective, but they never touched pace with the town of Groton, in which the property was, the peak was located. And they were evidently never encouraged to, because then Brittany Wilson at the time just forgot to recommend that. She was Marty's assistant, yet Brittany lived in Groton. So we delayed consideration until the petitioner actually met with the select board in Groton, and actually at town meeting, they took a vote, and it was unanimous against the petition. So this is a real interesting dance we take. Oh, I see what you put up there, and you copied the language.
Yeah, this is from USBGN, their local support. And this portion, which is on page 28 of their PDF, or it's labeled page 28. No, it's labeled page 23, but it is page 29. It's confusing. You can actually see the tension between what they think of petitions and what we in Vermont think of petitions. For them, the local support is more important than the petition. And you don't need any group to start the process with USBGN.
Well, and I don't, many times in
Yeah.
law, you can go beyond, state law allows you to go beyond if you're passing a local ordinance or things like this. So I have no problem with that disconnect, but I really do, as a matter of policy, and while we're talking about procedures here, and the statute, I think, is silent on this, that you're going to get into trouble if you ignore the local officials or representatives of a locality. And
but Bruce, I was just going to say, but you clarified it by saying, but remember, it comes to the board. We encourage you to do this, and it's not required, but if you don't do it, and we determine that it was important and you don't do it, we'll deny the petition. So I don't think we have to get too down in the weeds here, as they say, because the ultimate authority is us.
Linda's hand went up.
Yeah, I agree with that, but this was actually, in the conversation that I had with Kathy and Andrea, I think I questioned the word encouraged as opposed to required, because it seemed to me that we do care about local support. And Kathy, could you put up again, please, the USBGN requirements that you just had? Yeah, I really like that opening clause, because local use and acceptance of a name is important to the board. I really like that statement. And I don't care about the rest of it. You've edited out a lot of the information, Kathy, when you put it into our own procedures. But I really like that opening statement, and I think it's important for people to know that we care about it, because I could imagine this is just encouraged, it's not required, and I can imagine a group coming, proposing some name and are saying, sorry, you didn't check with the local select board. And they would say, well, why would we do that? I just think having that introductory clause would be very helpful.
Or for the research part, like connecting with the historical society in town.
Well, and that's there anyway. That's already in
Right,
what
right.
she's edited. I think
Does anybody have any objections to including that introductory clause?
I would just say strongly encourages, quite frankly. We can't require, because that would be going beyond the statute. We can't require.
Encourages is good enough. And if you don't do it, but if you include that introductory clause, that sort of implies. And what was that again, Kathy? There, what's it say?
So what we would do is to start out this paragraph here, the one that has been added related to local support. I'm highlighting it for those of you who are able to see the screen. Right now, it starts out with the petitioner is encouraged to include written support, but what it will start out with in the updated version, because local use and acceptance of a name is important to the board, a proponent of a new name or name change, and we could say a petitioner there. Or we could just leave it. Let's just leave it. A proponent of a new name or name change is strongly encouraged, to Bruce's point, to provide evidence of support for the proposal, as well as evidence of any published or verbal usage of the proposed name.
You can break Kathy, that down in 2 sentences. It's kind of long.
Yeah, and I was suggesting we just use the opening clause. I don't care about the rest of it necessarily.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Use it as 2 sentences.
Because this
just up to the sorry, Linda.
Yeah, so because local use and whatever is important to the board, comma, the board encourages the petitioner to include written support of for the proposal with the petition. Written support may be solicited from, and then you have your list.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then adding the word strongly in front of the word encourage.
Fine. Yep.
Bruce's.
We can add it. Right. Yep.
Cool.
I'm just making sure I've got it down. Okay, great.
So how does it read now?
Okay.
Sure. Because local use and acceptance of a name is important to the board strongly encourages the petitioner to include written support for the proposal with the petition. Written support of the proposal may be solicited from, and then the bulleted list of the various groups. Does that sound right?
Well, why don't you take out the first board? Because, local use and acceptance is important, the board strongly encourages. Leave it at that.
That sounds
works.
better.
Yeah.
That flows nicely. Who says
also,
you can't edit by committee?
Yeah. Sort of looks like a camel. That's okay.
Yeah.
Adrian.
I also appreciate the use of encouraged over required because of another reason it came up in the meeting with Linda, Kathy, and myself, that some organizations do charge fines or not fines, fees for accessing research. For example, the Vermont Historical Society, while fantastic for its resources, they do charge $7 a day to access the library if you are not a member. And also, if you want to have them conduct any research for you, it's $20 for a half an hour's worth of research. So I don't want that. I know that we don't want to make any barriers for anybody, and so that's also important consideration with encouraged versus required. On the
good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good point.
Yeah, and we're not going to be able to think of every permutation, but based on experience of at least 2 or 3 things. Also, the proposal to change Mount Ascutney too. Those are big issues, and people should be put on notice that you better have your try to get your ducks in a row locally at least, and communicate with the locality. And because this is a procedure, whoever is being the point of contact from the board, from the Department of Libraries, can emphasize that and point to this. Because Evan Litwin, that was his name, says, well, I see none of that in statute.
Yes.
None of it in statute, and none of that in your policy or whatever it is. And he also went on to say, I think it's important that you have to have people out from outside are the ones who bring changes. And I remember Deb, you and I were having a conversation. She said, I think, I wouldn't be too happy if somebody from Burlington wanted to tell us what to name something in Weston. And that's human nature. And because Vermont supposedly supports pride of place, that should be reflected in this.
Okay, very good. Can we go on to the next one? We want to get on. I think we got that. Beat that
Linda's
one.
hand
Oh,
is up.
okay.
No, I'm
Linda,
sorry.
is that okay?
I just
Okay.
haven't taken it down. My
Okay.
apologies.
And then Deb's hand is up now.
I just have a quick question. Where does like a select board fit in? Is that, we have often really wanted, the local government to sign off. So
I assumed that was in federal, state, or local municipal or county agencies.
Well, I know, but a select board isn't an agency.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a governing body.
Yeah, but if the planning board, that once again, that would be up. They say you can get approval from the select board, but if it's the local historical society and everything, select boards come and go. We could determine yes or no based on.
We could add in that first bullet, federal, state, or local, municipal, or county agencies and governing bodies.
I like that.
There you go.
Okay, it's good.
Somebody has joined us on telephone, and I don't know if that's James. Can Josh or Jesse or somebody who knows what's going on with James?
Let me double check. I think it's James.
Well, let me maybe we can unmute them or something. Okay, so then the next thing, and this is a point for conversation with the board. I want to check in with you. Oh, hold on, is that right? Oh, yes, okay. Petitioners, hold on, where is it? The petitioner shall send the geographic naming petition and associated documentation in written form via US mail to, and then this is our Board of Libraries address, care of the Department of Libraries at our 60 Washington Street location. My thinking here, in stipulating that it's by US mail, is that the petition is the primary mover. And a scan of a petition is not the same as a hand-signed petition. I do want you to know that we do have questions that are live around, would we accept an e-signature? We need to have on file here, I think, the original petition. And so, that's why we've done this. This is within your purview to decide, do you want to do something else? I have not figured out the logistics of if other departments are doing something else or how they do it. This is consistent, I believe, with what has been happening so far. So it might be, one suggestion is leave it like this for now, and then we could look into that other matter later. And if we find something viable, then we could change it.
I'd say leave it for now. If you're running for an office in a town or anything, you have to have written signatures. Sign petitions with 25 people.
Okay. And that will help us to answer the question if it comes, why can't I do an e-signature? That's so hard and burdensome today. We can just explain we need the physical signatures for XYZ reason. And they can mail this petition around if they want to do that to get petitions without having to be near one another. But okay. The next section, the petitioner should be aware that the entire petition is a public record and may be subject to public inspection and copying, as well as subject to being published by the department. There are kind of a couple of reasons for adding this. I noticed this language very similar to it in the USBGN policy procedure document. And I realized that these are official documents. There could be a FOIA request. We would likely redact information. But also, I am used to an open meeting environment where we help the public to participate in, from my time in California, where you kind of help the public to participate in the dialogue by showing them the documents ahead of time. I think the best practice for us is probably to, when we have a naming petition under consideration, put all of the documents we have with the identifying information redacted up on our website in advance so that people at home can see this is what was submitted by the petitioners. This is what's under consideration. Then people can react to it in their comments during the public comment. So we don't want people to be surprised that the things that they wrote are being seen by the public. We want to daylight the process more. And I see Deb's
Kathy?
hand. Yeah,
I like the inclusion of this.
I do too.
great. I see a thumbs up from Linda and a big nod from Bruce. So I'm feeling like I've managed to channel you all in that element of it, which is great. And then the last portion here in this petitioner, the person who was initiating, remember we have the petitioners with their individuals, and then the statute also pointed back to a petition of an administrative department of the state. This is less likely to happen from what I understand, but it does sometimes happen. And the language that we had in the current policies needed a little bit of an update to make sure that all of the departments could participate in the same way. Since different departments have different types of boards and some departments of state don't have any boards. The recommendation that I'm bringing forward is that geographic name requests initiated by an administrative department of state government must be signed by the agency's secretary or department commissioner. Requests initiated by administrative department of state government do not require 25 signatures, but do require complete documentation for consideration by the board. So this puts the burden of all of the petitioner work except gathering the signatures upon the department. And I see Bruce's hand is up.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I think that is an excellent revision. That language about the department's governing board, I think goes way, 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 way back to a time when there were boards for almost every darn department in the state. But then when we modernized things, a lot of those boards were eliminated. So I really like what you did, and I agree with it.
Thank you. I was a little worried, Bruce, that you would come back from Germany and be like, what has happened? My baby, no. And we would be back at the drawing board. I see James's face back with us again in the screen. And I'm wondering, James, is James able to communicate with us? And is he hearing us? And
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
James, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry it took me so long to connect. And I did have a question with regard to those administrative agencies too, because I guess I didn't really understand what complete documentation consisted of. And I was wondering whether or not it actually might be different from one agency to another, what would be complete documentation. So I did want to substitute the word essential. That way, that sliding scale from one agency to another would be understood when it came to deciding whether or not documentation is actually complete, quote unquote complete.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and maybe documentation is not the right word. What I was thinking is that everything that's required in the petition by the member of the public, except the signatures, is required here. So they need to provide the description and the GPS, and that second paragraph, the geographic naming petition must include written documentation to support the proposed geographic name. Those required, and it would be nice to have this extra information too. That's what I was trying to say with complete documentation. I thought you would want to look at a full application, the full set of materials. They don't need to gather 25 signatures. They have the authority to request it, but they do need to do the research. So there may be a better way to say that, James.
Okay, and I haven't figured out a better way to say that exactly. And I appreciate you explaining what you meant by documentation. That means everything that an ordinary petitioner would have to do too. So as it goes from one agency to another, there won't be any different requirements.
No, they need to meet your requirements.
That
Yeah.
explains it for me.
And I can use the example if I'm the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, and I want to change the name of the name of a lake to Tom Frank Lake. I could sign the petition, all of that. No, need all the documentation for that. It wouldn't make any difference where I came from the state agencies. It would everything has to be approved for us, the board, to approve it.
And one thing that we'll get into a little bit more, it's kind of a good segue in a way to the next section. I don't want to lose the fact that we may need better language for complete documentation. But one thing I want to be really clear about is that the Department of Libraries can gauge completeness of an application, but I would like us to not gauge the quality of the application. The Board of Libraries, I think you are the ones to gauge the quality of the application. Whereas we're the ones to say, here's a list, we've checked the list, these things have been submitted. But that discernment about, is it good enough, is really, in my mind, very clearly your authority to determine, is it good enough? Is it compelling enough to make the case? To you, you are the deciders. If I insert myself in saying, oh, I don't think this is good enough, there's a chance that you and I don't see eye to eye, and I've just kept somebody from you and from their process that they deserve to have.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Does anybody have a better way they can think of to say complete documentation, or with this additional information about what I meant by complete documentation, does it seem sufficient, or I don't know?
I think it's sufficient. I guess I don't understand James' concern about a distinction between complete and essential.
I think James was wondering if the different boards, oh, sorry, James, I don't mean to speak for you.
That's okay. I appreciate you. You probably could do a better job than me, as a matter of fact. But I just want to say documentation. I wasn't clear myself on whether that meant that anybody else who filed a petition had certain rules that they had to go by, and the state agencies also had to follow those exact same rules. And so my confusion was not understanding whether the exact same. Actually, I'm feeling that some of the administrative agencies might have a kind of I hate to say it, but kind of a leg up in the process because they're part of the government as it is. So I was just thinking that their rules might be different, and what they're required to do might be different. But now that I found out from Kathy that no, they're actually no different at all, then complete documentation does work for me.
Okay, there's one hand up.
Do we need the word documentation? I mean, the requirement, we've laid it all out. It just sounds so stern.
Deb's got her hand up too.
Maxie, I'm not sure what you're suggesting. You're saying,
I'm just saying, leave it out when you've completed the application. I'm a little lost right now here.
Well, I don't mind the word documentation, but what I was thinking of is maybe you want to say, and this might help what James was getting at, but do require complete documentation as described above for consideration by the board. So it's our complete documentation. I don't know what else, what other things an agency might require, but we have this required or suggested complete documentation above, as described above.
Maybe we could say requests initiated by an administrative department of state government should be accompanied by a complete petition, but do not complete geographic names petition, but do not require 25 signatures. The whole rest of the petition they have to fill out. It's all one big old petition.
Would materials be a better word than documentation? All the materials?
We used documentation before, right? Didn't we? Just so we're consistent, whatever we used before.
We talk about the complete petition must include. So I think we probably should say do requested. Maybe we should make it more active too, now that we're in there. Let me start typing. Hold on. Let's see. Let's leave it as it is to hold on. Request initiated by Administrative Department of State Government.
I like Debbie's suggestion as described above. Requests initiated by an administrative department do not require 25 signatures, but do require complete documentation as described above.
Okay.
Period.
That looks good. Yep.
Thank you. I also think it looks good and a lot less complicated than whatever was twisting itself out in my brain. So thanks. So I put it in the chat, what we've got now. Requests initiated by an administrative department of state government do not require 25 signatures, but do require complete documentation as described above for consideration by the board.
Yeah. Okay.
Whew. Okay. At this point, we have completed parts 1 and 2. I would like to give you all a round of applause and check in. Are we ready to move to part 3?
I would say so.
Okay.
Does anybody need a break? I don't, but if anybody needs a break, we can take like a 5-minute break or so.
I just had a side call with my family in Germany. So I'm good.
You already took a break. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll go on. If anybody needs a break, you can get up, take a break, mute yourself, and then come back, and we'll make
Great.
sure you're not on. Okay, let's go
Thanks,
on.
Tom. Okay, consideration of geographic name petitions by the board. Upon receipt of a geographic naming petition as signed by not less than 25 interested persons or by petition of an administrative department of the state, the board will initiate the process described below. And then 1. The Department of Libraries will forward each complete geographic naming petition and associated materials to the board. 2. The board may request assistance from the Department of Libraries in verifying documentation submitted by the petitioner. So this is saying we don't do the research for the petitioner or present on their behalf to make their case, but we can confirm that what they are saying is in fact in the sources that they have provided. 3 is largely as written originally. I did a tiny bit of wordsmithing. I hope that made it better, but if not, we can go back to what it said originally. The board will not approve a name for any geographic feature or location that commemorates or may be construed to commemorate living persons. Then there are 3 bullets. The first, a person must have been deceased for at least 5 years before a commemorative proposal will be considered. So Tom, you can't name everything after yourself as in your prior example.
Okay.
Bullet 2, a person in whose honor a naming is being proposed must have had strong ties to the feature in keeping with the statute or have made a significant contribution to the area or to Vermont. And then number 3, commemorative names or individuals with outstanding national or international reputation will be considered even if those individuals were not directly associated with the geographic feature or location. It's funny because 2 and 3 kind of contradict each other, but we've been working with them this whole time.
Washington County, Jefferson County,
Yeah, 2 says you must have had strong ties to the feature or made a significant contribution. And then 3 says, except we'll consider these other people. but it seems to be working, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one bullet.
Somebody had a hand,
Oh, I'm
hand
sorry,
raised.
Bruce. Bruce.
I'm not.
I hate to be a nudge. When you say the board will not approve a name, blah, 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 we won't even consider it. We
You're
won't even,
right.
we won't consider a petition. So what we're saying to somebody is don't even bother submitting it. You know, that's what I thought of right now. Obviously, it should never get to us.
Can we deny it? How legally? We can deny it. If somebody submits a petition, do we not have to deal with it?
I don't think we're required to.
Where are we right now?
3.
We're in 3.
Okay, the board will not consider?
Well, here's a question. Has this ever come up?
It has come up in some conversations. We did at one point do a bridge, but this is back when we were doing transportation features. We met at the Rutland Library years ago, and we had a petition submitted for a guy named Rick Ube, who had been a legislator down in Deb's area. He was from Londonderry, a really hail fellow, well met. He had been dead a year. And I don't even know if we have the 5-year requirement then, but we approved it. And I was the only member of the board that voted against it because I didn't think we should be approving a name for someone who had died so young. We may have even ignored our own procedure at the time, but I've had people say to me, Josh Fitzhugh, when he was on the board, and we were still doing streets and all that stuff, wanted to name Route 12 between Montpelier and Morrisville, Bill Doyle Highway for Senator Doyle, who used to teach at Johnson and lived in Montpelier. So it comes up once in a while, and it might again. So, but I would tell a petitioner ahead of time, we're not going to even deal with it. This is it. I mean, I don't.
Well, Bruce, I don't know if we don't. And this would be an illegal asking Jacob, but it could come. I mean, new library, you can tell them, by the way, the board is not going to approve this. I can submit it and we bring it up and it's dealt with. We deny it in about 2 minutes.
Well, what does the statute say in this case, Kathy?
My sense is that the statute is saying that this petition with 25 signatures, regardless of what the name is, would trigger a consideration of the name by the board. There is this, the standards portion that I've just got up on the screen now. The board
historic.
in choosing names
right
shall
there.
give preference to historical events, historic persons, and flora and fauna native to Vermont, names characteristic to Vermont, and its traditions and local place names where long usage has made them appropriate and useful. That's largely what your names have been based on, but you give yourselves a little bit of leniency with the the commemorative names for folks who have a large impact in the world. I think my sense is that you would need to consider and quickly say no to.
Okay, I thought our statute listed that we would not, but maybe it was just our prior policies that said we would not consider a name for someone who had not been dead at least 5 years. You know, that's why, because I just didn't want anybody to go through the motions of doing a petition if we're not going to approve it. Well, why consider it? You know, but if legally we don't have the right to say it, then we can't say it.
I can get clarification from Jacob or from council, because look at how this is black. Remember, the black is your existing procedure. A person must have been deceased for at least 5 years before a commemorative proposal will be considered. Maybe you held them for 5 years. But then the signatures are stale. People may have died. You may not have all of the people. Somebody may have changed their mind. I think they would need a new petition at the 5-year point. Linda's hand went up.
Yeah, I don't, I guess I think because it's not in the statute, anything about commemorative names. So these procedures that we're writing here will be public, right? They'll be published on the library website or on the board's website. Is that right, Kathy?
So right now, this is what is up. The geographic names procedures. Let me zoom it a little bit. This is your current geographic names policies, and this exact language, except for the first sentence, almost this exact language is public and up. And it's part of the packet that Jason and prior state librarians would send out.
Okay, so it's, I just want to be sure that it's clear to people that if they propose something, we will not approve it.
Yeah, there's not much use in coming to talk about it with the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem here is considered, because Bruce is right, not consider it. It doesn't come to us, as opposed to will be denied.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question, because if it's not in statute, what gives us the right to say this?
Deb's got a hand up too.
Yep, Deb.
Oh, but I think Deb froze.
Okay, be frowned upon or something, but
Yeah.
How about will not be likely to approve?
yeah, that's something. Just because in my case, there might be, if somebody is assassinated and all of that, and whatever. But yeah, and that's better. Gives us flexibility.
Well, is there always an exception to the rule?
If we write flexible rules, yes. It's not an exception. It's just flexible.
My physicist husband doesn't understand that statement.
Yeah. Well,
that there's an exception to every rule.
Yeah. But anyway, 5.
So how should this
should be deceased for at least 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you can just leave it as it is then, and let it go from there. But at some point, we should talk about changes to the statute too. So some of these things are clear right in the statute. But that's for another day.
So do we want to change any words in number 3? I want to be sure I capture any that are relevant. Or we're okay just leaving it this way with the addition of the 3 red words. Okay. All right. And I can see that my Roman numeral, whoever taught me Roman numerals in 3rd grade or whenever that was, I start getting a little bit loopy here. So I promise you we will have the corrected Roman numerals if it takes the entire Department of Libraries proofreading for me.
I'm glad you blamed it on your 3rd grade teacher and not your 2nd grade teacher.
Nothing that the 2nd, I'm betting it didn't even happen at Orchard School, Bruce, because that was the optimal educational environment. Okay, so the next one, the board will not approve more than 1 name for any geographic feature or location. That's exactly as written previously. The first 6, the board will consider geographic naming petitions during its meetings. The reason for some of this is to really, it's important that folks realize that all of our meetings of the board are properly noticed and warned meetings. So just making sure people know when they're going to be able to participate. This needs to be edited to be Roman numeral. Let me see. Hold on. Roman numeral 7. The Department of Libraries will notify the petitioner in writing of the date and location of the meeting at which the geographic naming petition will be considered by the board.
Kathy, I know you'll correct this, but this is actually the correct 6. The previous one is 5. Just
Oh my
V.
God. Okay.
So it correctly, this
hello.
is 6, and then we're 7.
Okay. Thank
Hello,
you for,
everyone.
Hello, everybody. Who's
Hello,
that?
hello, everyone.
James.
This is Deb. My internet went off, so I'm
Oh,
now
okay.
on the phone.
oh, okay,
Okay.
great.
Can I ask a question on,
Yeah.
will not approve more than one name for any geographic feature or location? Now, what do you mean? And I have a reason for asking that.
You can change a name, but you can't have one feature with 2 names.
Suppose you wanted to name a peak. There's an unnamed peak down near Stratton. And Stratton was where Benton Mackay, who founded the Long Trail, and James Taylor, who founded the Long Trail. Suppose I wanted to name a peak, peak or Mount Mackay and Taylor. That's one name. Which, I mean, it's crazy, but.
I would say that was an okay petition.
Okay, fine.
But I would think that if it was, I think it's that the board does requests for naming and for renaming.
Right.
And that we wouldn't keep one and add the other. And an example of this is probably an example I can think of related to the world of libraries. I know we're not naming buildings, but I can tell you it's very confusing when a library has 2 names. So for example, the Bayview Branch Library in San Francisco was then renamed the Linda Brooks Burton Branch after a deceased and really wonderful district manager. And then suddenly the branch had 2 names. And people didn't know where they were going. And then it became a very long / name, Bayview, Linda Brooks Burton Branch. And it really gets messy. And so that's what I'm thinking this is trying to avoid.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let's see. Where did we go next? I think we're down to now we're back on track with 7. Oh, Linda, your hand is up. Did you have one? Or is that just an old hand? Okay. The next one is the Department of Libraries will notify municipalities where the geographic feature is located, local media, and the USGS, United States Geological Survey, and the United States Board on Geographic Names, USBGN, of the date and location of the meeting at which the geographic naming petition will be considered by the board. So in addition to telling the petitioner when it is, we take already the step of telling these folks. And this is the correct name of USBGN with the 4th word being on, not of. So there are a couple times I've caught where I thought it was of, and we'll make sure that it's always on for USBGN if it's spelled out. The next one is that the board will allow for citizen comment on each geographic naming petition it considers. So the board will always hear from the public on geographic naming. And just a terminology point, from what I understand in this context, this is public comment and it's not a hearing, it's our regular meeting. We consider these things during our meetings. And when I say we, I mean you all. The next one, I think we're down to 9. The board will follow citizen comment with discussion among board members. The board may ask for additional comment or may have questions for persons, including the petitioner, those who provided citizen comment, and those with relevant information to the petition. This allows that, it kind of calls out, don't do your comments and then skedaddle out of there because we might want to follow up with you. That's what you can expect in the hearing. We might have back and forth at the board's discretion. Number 10, the changes are just to clarify that it's a meeting, not a public hearing, and it's comment, not testify. So number 10 would read, the board has the authority to determine whether it will take any action on a petition when no one appears at a meeting to comment either on behalf of or against the proposed geographic name. This also strikes the telephone opinion parentheses. But remember, all of the old versions are going to stay up in perpetuity on the website as we need to for adopted procedure. Number 11, I'm not seeing any flags on the play, so I'm just going to keep going. The board may request that the petitioner provide additional information or documentation to support the petition. And this has been added because I've heard from department staff and from some of you, people are sometimes confused when they're told, go away and come back with more, we'll schedule you again. Sometimes they think, I am here today, you have to make a decision today, and it's up to you on the board when you make your decision and if you want more information. Number 12, if the board requests that the petitioner provide additional information or documentation to support the petitioner shall provide this information within 90 days to keep the petition active. If no response to additional requests of information is received, a final 30-day notice to respond will be sent. If no response is given, the board may suspend the petition pending further review or vote to close the petition with the requirement that the petitioner resubmit a new petition if they wish the board to resume consideration of the proposed name. This was almost exactly as written in a document that I found in a file in our office. This is what we were generally doing behind the scenes at the department. These dates are what we had been doing. I don't know if someone in the board had told us to or not. We can change these, we can take this out, but I do want to make sure everybody realizes that the petition in Vermont is extremely important, and a stale petition is somewhat problematic because at the time when the petition is considered, it should be fresh enough that everybody would still have signed it. Everybody, all 25 of those people would still know what we're talking about, remember signing it, be still willing to sign it that day. Linda?
Yeah, I'm a little, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up when we were talking earlier, Kathy, but I'm a little confused about the timeline here. So the petitioner has 90 days to provide the requested information.
Yeah.
Then it says, if no response to additional requests of information is received. So those additional requests come during the 90 days or after the 90 days? That's my first question. It says requests plural. And then, I'm sorry, just let me finish my question.
Yeah.
And then a final 30-day notice to respond will be sent. So is that 30 days after the 90 days, giving them really 120 days to respond? Or is it 30 days after the 90 days and then after the additional requests for information? So effectively they could have 150 days or something.
I think that what it means is, so we look at, or what I'm trying to say in it, you look at number 11. So in the meeting, the board makes a request of the petitioner, please come back with some additional stuff. That is like day 0, I guess. And that petitioner from the date of that request being made by the board has 90 days. And if the board hasn't heard back from the petitioner, then the petitioner is kind of flagged and, hey, we still haven't heard from you. So the total is 120 days.
Right, because we have 90 days between meetings. So we requested at one meeting, and if it isn't within 90 days, it isn't in time for our next meeting. And then we can say, did you get the information? Nope, we didn't get the information. What do we want to do? We have to give them the extra 30 days to get it.
And then hear it at meeting 3.
And hear it at meeting 3.
So the additional requests for information at the 90-day point, they are given. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see.
30 days to make sure they
After
get that
that
information. Yes.
Yeah, but you know what? Can we, if no response to additional requests for information is received, those additional requests that are referred to there are from the meeting itself, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how about if we just say, if no response is received, A final
Yes.
30-day notice to respond will be sent.
How about if
Because-
no response is received within 90 days of the request, of the initial request?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. That just repeats 90 days, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
It seems like it's really confusing, so.
Okay,
Taking
if
s-
no response to is received within 90 days of the initial request, a final 30-day notice will be sent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. We're not asking for additional information. We're asking again for the same information we asked for
Yeah.
before.
Do
Yeah,
you think
yeah.
we should say if no responsive documents are
No.
received? No. Okay, good. I'm just complicating things. Bruce's hand is up.
Yeah, so where does that leave those poor people up in Bakersfield who have been twisting in the wind for almost over 2 years now? Remember, we approved their darn petition and then had to withdraw our approval. And so where are they now?
They
Does anybody-
probably need a new petition that's 2 years old, and your rules have changed. Everybody needs a new petition.
So do we communicate that to them?
We will communicate with anybody who has pending things.
Okay, okay,
Everybody should meet this. If you approve all these changes,
yeah.
everybody should meet the current procedure. This came up last month. There was a member of the public, Bruce, who was saying, well, can't you just continue on with your old policies until you do the new procedure? And it's like, the whole reason is we want everything to be clear and everything to be consistent. So
Yeah,
that was sort of a
yeah,
note to that question.
I saw that in the minutes and appreciate your response.
Okay, another hand is up.
I think that one is Bruce's.
Oh, okay.
Down now.
Okay, so moving to the next, we're on 13. The board may choose for any reason to postpone a vote on a geographic naming petition or to continue review of a petition at a future meeting. So this is really just nailing home. It's your work. You decide how it gets done. It's people may want something more quickly, but you need the information that you need to feel comfortable.
So we don't need to, but based on that, we do not need to page Brooke for a new petition if they get all the stuff in, because we just tabled it, didn't we, to the next meeting?
They may need to do something different with the new form.
Okay.
Yeah. They may not need a new 25 signatures, but we may just want them to go through the formality of the revised
Yeah.
paperwork.
Okay.
Let's see.
With our apologies. Yes.
Yeah. Number 14, the board will strive to name Vermont geographic features consistent with the domestic geographic names editorial guidelines of the U.S. Board on Geographic Names, USBGN. You've been doing that already. There's been some dialogue going on back and forth so that there can be one name at the state and federal level. And that also gives people somebody else to point to about where is why is there no apostrophe in Camel's Hump? My burning question upon moving to the state and thinking about it.
That's basically a long practice in this state. There's no Mallett's Bay that's a positive. It's, plural, but you find it differently. But for some reason, that's been
corners or Taft's corner. Yeah, the apostrophe in USBGN, they have a whole section on the apostrophe, and we're doing it consistent with them. You all are doing it consistent with them.
We don't use them, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with, well, that's probably because of postal addresses, no punctuation in postal addresses.
Sometimes, and this is going into the weeds, but with Native American names, there can be some sounds that are, from what I understand from looking at the USBGN, there can, if the board received a naming petition that was for a Native American name that included what sounds that are denoted by what looks like English punctuation, we would check in with USBGN and make sure that that we were doing that right, because I think that there are more sounds in language than our alphabet accommodates for. The next one is, strangely, this has never been noted anywhere. So we have drawers filled with these orders, which apparently should just be letters. So number 15, the state librarian will issue a letter announcing the Board of Libraries naming decision with the meeting minutes attached. The Department of Libraries will post the decision on its website and will send the decision to the following entities. And there is a laundry list of entities. There's at least one entity missing that Adrian suggested that we add. And now, Adrian, I think
Yeah,
I've
so
forgotten.
I can mention what that is. So
Yeah.
there's two names. One I strongly recommend, and one is I would consider recommending. So both are state government employees under the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation. One of the roles would be the State Historic Preservation Officer. They deal with historic persons and places, and they also deal with the environment, not limited to that, but for example, archaeology. They oversee state archaeologists. And then the other one to consider would be the second section chief for the state historic sites, because they also deal with people and places, but also their job role, the description does include that they are the state historian. So that's to consider, so that because they deal with historic people, places, sites, and events. So they're also to be considered.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
The state librarian will issue a letter announcing the board's naming decision.
Oh, you're right. Thank
Okay.
you.
And then I have some changes on that long list. First, number A, petition designated representative of representatives.
Petitioner.
How do we know that?
I think we should say the petitioner there.
Okay, and then they can take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Now, on B, you say town clerk of town or towns where feature is located. We also have cities.
How about municipalities?
You know, that would cover it, I think.
Okay. Good point.
And I don't know if everybody's got a clerk. I think that may be a constitutional office. Go down to J. It's Office of Legislative Counsel, COUNSEL. And I checked that out on the legislature's website because I've seen it both ways. On M, let's see, you got United States Geological. Okay, let's go to M. Secretary, Agency of Transportation. Okay, it's changed. It used to be a commissioner for a department, and that got upgraded. I don't know whether under Shumlin or Phil Scott. And then W, Green Mountain Club, period. Its formal incorporated name is the Green Mountain Club. I don't think there's any other in Vermont. And having been an active member with the club, I would like to see it called what it is, the Green Mountain Club.
Thank you. Yeah, this was part of that other behind the scenes document. So I just copied it wholesale, and I ought to have done my due diligence. And Bruce, I appreciate greatly that you did my due diligence. So thank you.
No, you're doing
Bruce
a lot
is
of
back.
work. Bruce
Bruce
is
is
back, right?
He was in Germany. You know how
Get
they
rid of
are.
him, you know. I'm like a no-see him, just swat him away.
Here he's back. You don't have to worry.
That was like a mic drop. Just he's back, definitely. So I had no objections at all to adding Adrian's two recommended to make it go down to Y, with X being the State Historic Preservation Officer and Y being the section chief for the State Historic Sites / State Historian. I think we may want to get in touch with them to see how they prefer to be called out for this particular work. But if everybody else is amenable, poor Jesse gets to help me get all these notifications out. Okay, we're coming to the end. We're now on page 4. If you printed it out and are following along at home, we are at number 16.
Can you scroll up? I can't see it.
Oh, thank you. I forgot we're even looking at it. I'm looking at all of your faces. Okay, here we go.
Okay, thank you.
The board, it's at the top of this page. The board will recommend to the USBGN that it not make official for use in or on any federal publication any new name or name change for any Vermont geographic features which have not yet come to the Board of Libraries for consideration and a decision.
A little nudge point again, and Linda can probably weigh in, is I had our PR person when I worked at VSAC explain to me the difference between when you use which and when you use that.
Mhm.
And in this case, I was told it should be that.
You haven't said which one, so it's a that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's,
it should be that have not yet come to the Board of Libraries for
That is not yet.
consider. Okay.
You know, if you already know which one it is, it's that. If you don't know which one it is, you use which. I think that's the.
I think there's other stuff wrong with this. So can I read it to you as it seems like it makes sense? Hang on. The board will recommend to the USBGN that it not make official for use in or on any federal publication, any new name or name change for a Vermont geographic feature that has not yet come to the Vermont Board of Libraries for consideration and a decision. We keep it all singular because
right.
the guidance I have is that we consider each thing individually. So the answer to the question of, can I bring 75 brooks to you for consideration in one fell swoop? We consider each individually.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll, as edited here for that one. And then we already moved the next two, which are the final two, up to the top. So that means we are now at the point where people could talk about any old thing. We've gone through everything.
Okay.
I see Maxie waving.
I have a comment. At first I thought, why are we doing this? And I have totally changed my mind. I would like to congratulate Kathy and her staff for doing an absolutely wonderful, thorough examination of our procedure. And I'm really impressed because as the octogenarian in our group, I have lived through quite a few administrations, not just in Vermont, but also in Germany, where name changes were just done. I mean, I moved from Adolf Hitler Street to Breisgauer Straße to Matterhorn to Lilies in the Field. I'm just, so I really appreciate what you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I really, it means
Hear,
a lot
hear.
to hear that. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, really seriously based on some of the past things we've been through, to have had this laid out the way it is, reorganized the way it is, clarified the way it is, would have been absolutely totally helpful. And that I'm still not foreclosing the option to recommend statutory changes in the future, but this is fantastic. And I talked to prior librarians about doing this. We never got to it. You got to it. Congratulations to you and Jesse and anybody else who's assisted there on the staff.
So do we have a
Definitely.
motion?
Wait, hang on. I want to call out a
Okay.
name of somebody who has been really very helpful and stepped in at a time when we didn't have an executive assistant in-house, and that's
Oh,
April
yes.
Shaw.
April.
Has done
Yes.
great work, and she has such attention to detail, and she's just really been helpful. And talking this through with April and getting the history from her and getting the history from each of you has really helped me to work with you to craft something that I hope will support you in a little bit more fully in the coming years, and just make it really clear to people. But huge appreciation for April, and also Lauren, who came before April, who I think had also been documenting sort of what do we do so that the next person could carry it on. So we are standing on the shoulders of giants here in a way, just that we've got, we're here for a reason. And so now, this, I think everybody can feel a little bit more confident about the path forward, I hope. All right, that's my speech. Tom, sorry to interrupt.
No, I would just say, and all said and done, we have a quorum here of the whole board. So do I have a motion?
I would be happy to make the motion, and to approve the procedures or policies. What are they? Whatever they're called. They're called procedure. And I also want to echo Bruce's words about complimenting Kathy and her staff for attacking this and addressing this, because I think this will make everybody's job much more understandable and easy. So thank you.
And I'll second it with a
Okay.
shout out to April too.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And Jesse that's putting it all together here. Jesse gets stuck with it now. So any additions, corrections at this point? Any additional comments? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we
And-
need a roll call for this?
Not if it's unanimous.
Yeah,
Okay.
any opposed? No opposed, any abstentions? Then it's unanimous. Yeah. Fantastic.
I
Okay.
had no expectation that would happen today. I thought we might be back talking about this at another meeting. I'm sorry to jump in. I just am so astonished. We did it.
Yeah.
Good job.
And we'll have it all together, and then of course if there's any typos or anything that we can bring up at the next meeting, but that's fine. So it's done. Did you want to go, because the next on the agenda was a little bit of your update, which we couldn't do last time. Do you want to say anything about the library, Kathy?
Well, we just wanted to make time for folks. We got cut short last meeting because there was just so much on the agenda. We had those great guests and then the long PowerPoints. So I just wanted to be open to any questions folks had about the state librarian report that I had submitted for the July 12th meeting. At the beginning of our meeting today, Bruce met Jesse on Teams for the first time. Really noteworthy thing that happened here is that Jesse joined our team. We're really grateful to have her, and she's helping with all kinds of things. Another quick hiring update is that Jeanette has in her team an open position right now that's posted. And that is a position that used to be filled by JJ. And there's a clerical component and also a communications component. So we're really excited. The classification of that position has up-leveled and changed a little bit to incorporate more communications work. So we're really excited to begin the hiring process for that one. Since the July 12th meeting, we did have a working group meeting on the topic of staffing. There's just a lot of stuff to talk about with staffing. I know that it is a topic that needs a lot of study and it is very complicated by the different circumstances all around the state and the different libraries, the different sizes of libraries, the different traditions of how they've been staffed in the past, the support levels, the funding levels, the size of the community served, all different aspects. So the working group gave me the green light to look at potentially doing a staffing survey with bringing a professional consultant in to do a staffing survey at the state level. We had done an initial one in our department, but the results were sort of overwhelming and hard to draw conclusions from. So with all of those variables, we're likely to move forward with a professional study that's commissioned by the working group.
Yeah. May I comment on that, or do you want to continue?
Yeah, I think those are the only two big things, except just to wrap up, our team is continuing to just go everywhere. I have a little map that Jesse printed out for me, and I'm trying to turn my map yellow. So here's my map.
Oh.
Everything that's yellow or orange is a library I've been to. in a town in Vermont. And I think I'm at 38 town public libraries. Jessie thinks I'm at more than that. Jessie's shaking her head.
Yeah, you're at like 40, 41.
It was getting hard to count, I have to
Yeah.
say. It was getting tough. I was out yesterday and I'm a little tired from my trip down to the Bennington area and from the cliff jumping that I decided to do in Dorset after visiting the Dorset Library. You know, there's a giant quarry that you can leap into. It's amazing. Yay, Vermont. So I think that's my whole update. Adrian, you've got your hand up.
Wow. I'm glad I didn't hear about that beforehand. I would have been all worried for you, jumping in the quarry. I'm glad it went well.
Thanks.
So in terms of the prior survey, that was done by the Department of Libraries, and the participation, I don't know if that was high or low, but one of the concerns would be because things become public record and handling privacy under the consultant, that will be, I think there's excitement that it'll be done in a more complete way, in addition to looking at patterns and being able to analyze it and be able to draw those conclusions. So were there any comments of what you learned so far in the initial survey that will help guide the second?
We didn't actually do very much in terms of data analysis, because looking at the data, just kind of the raw data, it was like, holy moly, oh my goodness. So we just paused right where we were. But as far as staffing, I think it's fair to, as far as what we were hearing in the working group, I think it's fair to say that our staffing in Vermont libraries is consistently inconsistent town to town. And that's something I just keep being struck by on every one of these topics, that it's hard to draw a conclusion about services being offered. That there's really just a great variety in funding streams and understanding of what's possible in libraries, I think, in some situations. All of the staff are wearing many, many hats. So there's a great need for training for folks that they're saying, oh, I'm good at XYZ. And everybody's XYZ is different, by the way. It depends where they come to the work from, but they feel really confident about this handful of things. And then there's this other realm where they really would like some more support. So there's some training needs for folks. But really the big libraries, the little libraries, the big communities, the little communities, that is just very varied. And so I think that that's kind of typical of what we're finding overall. So it could be that really that's the biggest takeaway of the working group. My goal is that the working group can identify some areas that are kind of where we need the most supports, identify what is going really, really well and where we need the most supports. And there may be continued work in those areas, either by a different group or by somebody specific is picking up the mantle for the next piece.
I'm really glad you reached out to Ruth Hardy, who is the sponsor of this thing, and goes all the way back to Maxie and from Rebecca, taking a trip. So it's so I'm glad you met Ruth, and I think that was very wise. So
yeah, and I know that she's just very supportive of getting Vermonters the best library service that we can get. I've also begun just recently, I cold called the New Hampshire State Librarian, and he was great to talk to. And he has been the state librarian as long as I've been a librarian. I think that that's true. So I think he said he became the state librarian in 1999, and that is when my diploma says 2000, but it's because I didn't turn in a piece of paper on time. So I actually did my coursework all in 1999 and had begun working as a librarian already. So he's been at a really high level in New Hampshire this whole time, and he's a great resource, and so are some of the other state librarians. I do think we are probably going to try to get some folks from other state library administration agencies to come and speak to the working group to talk about some of the structures in place in their states and things that have helped them, or at least do some interviews with them so that we can gather that info.
I second that, because the board several years ago, when we were, we brought in whomever that guy is, Wilson and Hummel, to look at libraries in the state and strategic direction. We met video feed with, I guess, Indiana, librarian there, Oregon, and audio with the state librarian in Idaho, and gave us an idea of the hits they took to their budget over time, and really put things in a real world context for us to help advise the state librarians. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, there is also an interest in trying to figure out sort of systematically studying how state libraries and academic institutions overlap. We're getting a lot of testimony from public librarians, some testimony from school librarians, and some testimony from academic librarians. The dean of UVM reached out recently to talk about some potential grant funding to look at, going for some potential grant funding to look at more of like how we can do our work in our region of the country with academic institutions and state libraries, and kind of what's going well and what needs help. So I think we've got quite a lot of irons in the fire. So we just have to keep following and pulling at little threads and seeing where they lead us. It's a very interesting time for us. And I'm really intrigued by everything that there is to learn here. So it's a little daunting, but it's really, for me, it provokes a great curiosity, which I really, I really am happy to do this work. So. Linda, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm thrilled with this study, and I think the more support that the state library can give to local libraries is absolutely crucial and vital, and it's wonderful that the working group is collecting all of this information. I am aware, though, too, especially based on one comment you said, that local people need more training, that whatever the conclusions are of the working group is undoubtedly going to put more work onto you and your staff. And I'm reminded that and I know that your staff has been cut over the years, has been cut drastically. And I remember a request that we made of Jason at some point, your predecessor, that he should keep track of those things that aren't getting done, or that he cannot do, that he has to refuse to do because of a lack of staffing. Because I think that kind of data can be really helpful as you go to the legislature for more funding, or to defend yourself against further cuts, for that matter. But if you can keep track of those things that you're being asked to do that you simply can't do, I think that's really important.
Good idea.
That's an excellent idea. The thing that is tough is that, and this is sort of speaking of staffing in libraries, the Department of Libraries is very much like the team that you'll find in any other library around the state. And that the truth of it is, when people ask us for something, we almost always try to say yes to it. And so we can quickly find ourselves over capacity, kind of stretched very thin. Toward that end, one thing that our team, and I can put more information on this in the upcoming meeting, we can talk about it more, but we're working to really kind of define what is it we are trying to do to meet our statutory obligations, to serve the public. What are our priorities? Where are we planning? This is where the money's going. This is what our focus is going towards, so that we can kind of have a roadmap, because we can really be pulled off course very easily by all of them wonderful projects and ideas and notions. But this is a great opportunity for us to do some strategic planning and budgeting together. And we've begun that work since the last meeting. We had an outdoor convening of our consultants and leadership team We went to Hubbard Park. I was told nobody would do any athletic activities, but then a Frisbee came out. So we had a little Frisbee warm up, and then just a really high tech meeting in which we used a flip chart and markers. And we just sort of got down to business of everybody sharing what they're finding is going out when we were visiting people out in Vermont libraries, and the consultants really having great things to share about where they see our work going, and it was a really, I thought it was a really great opportunity to hear from them and to kind of tap into their experiences. And we're having another full department meeting. Oh my gosh, it might even be this Friday. I'm feeling a little bit like I need a nap just saying that. Yeah, it's this Friday again outdoors, and just trying to kind of get us all together and really get our creative minds flowing about how we can do this work together. And so I feel like I'm really blessed right now. We have such a great team here in the Department of Libraries, and I know that we can get a lot more than you'd think 18 people can get done. But yeah, definitely if there are things we want to do that we don't really think we have the capacity to do yet, or things that people are asking us that sound like great projects that we're really not able to pick up, we definitely, I love that idea, Linda, to keep track of those.
Yeah, don't fall into the trap when they say, oh, you can do more, more with less. No, I can do more with more. I can't do more with less. We're doing what the maximum that we can. Yep. Okay, any other? Because that looks like, I think it's the adjournment time.
One last comment for the German speakers on this meeting, at least two. So when I was in Germany, I was helping my 21-month-old granddaughter go to sleep, and she handed me something and said "dich," and I knew what she meant. It meant you. She was giving me something. So my German is still skeletal, but I'm learning a little bit, and I'm at least up almost to a 20-month-old skill level. So there you go. Thought you'd like that, Maxie and Jeanette.
I do. Yes, I do. Okay, we'll talk German later.
Okay, Auf Wiedersehen to everybody. That's the limit of my German. I thank everybody for doing this. This was great, and I'm sure Kathy's happy. She's already said she's happy that we've got this behind us.
You can't see, but my face is, I am beaming right now. I just looked at myself when you mentioned I was happy, and I'm smiling just for no reason at all of you.
Okay, very, very good. And our next meeting, of course, is in October, the second Tuesday of the month, whatever day that is, from 10 to 12. And thank you very much. And I'm sure you can call Kathy anytime you want to talk about things. And so thank you, everybody.
Yep, good seeing you all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
Thank
Good meeting.
you. Bye.
Happy summer.
Bye.